Hello and welcome to Flat Earth UK. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and here for the first time is my show. I'm hoping it'll go on for a long time into the future, and I'll give a little bit of introduction about what I'm going to cover today in the show. So on today's show, I'm first going to look at my first month of making Flat Earth YouTube videos and my progression, where I've come from, how I've come to this conclusion, and where I am today. Secondly, I'll talk about other YouTubers for anybody who's tuning into this for the first time. If you have no idea about the subject of Flat Earth, I'll cover a few other YouTubers, idea of where to look for information that might help you. Or if you're a complete skeptic, place to have a good laugh and poke fun and ridicule and basically say how idiotic Flat Earth people are. Either way, I'm a fairly open-minded guy, so I'm going to run a Q&A. I've invited a guest. I'll cover that first. We may do a section 3, which is I've invited a guest. Hopefully that person will pop by. I know they're doing making videos and editing and doing various other things as we speak, so hopefully they'll come by. I'm pretty sure I've sent them the correct link, and they said that they've got the Google bits and bobs sorted out, but time will tell. Fingers, hope for the best. And then, as I say, we'll move on to some Q&A. So I should have, hopefully, if it's all working correctly, the Q&A working in Google Plus. So viewers who are watching on Google Plus, let's see if that's actually working. Hopefully so. Should be, but there's no questions as yet. So if you want to post a question in the YouTube comments, if you're watching this on YouTube, I've got the iPad running as a monitor, although it's on about a 5-minute delay. I did actually write down how long the delay is. No, I've only got the PC delay for 25 seconds. But yeah, there's a fairly substantial delay, so I'll leave those till last and cover some of the questions that are on YouTube. And if they come in live on the Q&A, I'll see them hopefully on my screen. If there's time at the end, hopefully we'll look at some past comments on some of my video logs and go through sort of my mentality when it comes to people's comments. So that's our show. Welcome to Flat Earth UK. So first and foremost, as I say, top of the list is, why am I here? Why am I sat in front of you doing a live broadcast about Flat Earth? Well, it's been a month making Flat Earth video logs and various other videos, a little bit longer if you count some of the stuff that I did with only a vague notion of where I was going with this idea. But in case you haven't figured out and you haven't looked at the title, Flat Earth is a big subject to me. And if you're here and you've just joined in because you've seen my smiling face and you just wanted to see, this is going to be a Flat Earth show. And hopefully I'm joined with guests in the future that will discuss this on both the positive and the negative side. So I'm not just going to invite Flat Earthers on here to, I think I said it in one of my video logs, have a little love in and talk about how wonderful the Flat Earth is. If that's the case, it gets boring. So I want some skepticism. I want some, I don't want to use this term, but it gets bandied around a lot, globe heads, to post negative comments. Not negative as in horrible comments, but as in anti-Flat Earth. So I can, hopefully do a good job of correcting, from at least my understanding, some of the lies that are out there. And if I can do that, that's all I'm aiming for here, is to get this information out there. But as I say, I want guests to come on and basically discuss the heliocentric and the geocentric models that we have named this planet, this Earth, this place that we live. So how did I come to the conclusion that we live on the flat Earth? Well, again, in one of my video logs, I discussed having asked many of these questions, or I assumed, going back a step, that everybody, when they heard Flat Earth laid out for them, would go, light bulb above their head, yeah, this makes sense to me. Because that's how I felt. I had always questioned throughout my life, it didn't matter if I was on a plane or looking up at the moon or whatever it was, questioning our reality. And I'm a big fan of science. I'll sort of go through this in vague detail of how I've got to where I am from a non-flat Earth point of view. But I watched a lot of science videos. I was a subscriber to the NASA channel, Science at NASA, that is. I'll get to math Powerland later. But yeah, I like to watch a lot of scientific stuff, and there's a lot of cartoony stuff that I also subscribe to, along with Minute Physics and all the other nice science channels that break stuff down, and they're great to give you, I'll call it this, but of the lie. So along with that, I watched videos on conspiracies, so some not so conspiratorial, so psychopaths, and some a bit more conspiratorial, if that's an English word, but they would be about things like subliminal messages and predictive programming, and the way society works with psychopaths and their motives in society. So those were the sort of things that got my attention. Obviously I'd looked at the JFK stuff and the 9/11 stuff, and the stuff that, to be fair, does get, I don't know if it's to increase the amount of disinformation out in the media, but the stuff that's plastered all over YouTube, and it recommends, maybe it's just me because they're recommendations, I know you will all get different recommendations on your channels to my crazy stuff that YouTube recommends for me, but nonetheless, those are the sorts of things I was looking at when I came across, if I can get my tongue around it, when I came across the NASA channel, or Math Powerland I think is his name on Facebook, but his actual name is Matthew Bolan, and in late August I watched a very strange video that Matt had done on the flat Earth, and his actual channel, just so this is clarified now, is called, all one word, the NASA channel, and that's Math Powerland. I'm going to stick to Math Powerland. That's Math Powerland's YouTube channel. That I believe it was on his channel that I came across his strange video, and he wasn't laying anything out in certain terms. Again, for anyone not watching the title, this is a flat Earth broadcast, but he wasn't laying it out in no certain terms. He was talking in I don't know what to say, he was talking in metaphors or anything, but he was just talking about a given subject, and it wasn't flat Earth, although the encompassing subject was. And when the penny dropped for me during Matt's video, that he was essentially pointing out that the Earth was flat, for me a light bulb went off above my head, and I sort of got it straight away. I thought, this is sort of fantastic. Let's just read my notes and see where I am so I don't go too much off topic. So yeah, so I spent every waking moment of the next maybe month looking at non-stop YouTube videos, endless sleepless nights. I'm a bit of an insomniac anyway, and when you get something juicy like the flat Earth that you can actually, not just for me, wrap my head around, but you could get behind and believe and put the pieces together, or more and more of them, let's use a better analogy, you could go further down the rabbit hole with flat Earth. For me, as soon as I heard those two words, a lot of the conspiracy stuff that I've been looking at in the past sort of got pieced together as people laid out more and more information. So each beat of the flat Earth story was a consistent one and made sense to me as I not researched but sort of reviewed things that I'd already encountered. So that was where I came to wanting to tell people. So you start off by wanting to tell your family. I think I woke my wife up in the middle of the night to tell her, the world's flat, because the penny had dropped that quickly for me. But from there you want to tell your sister, and my brother-in-law, and to a degree they're a very small child. But we debated it I debated it with my brother-in-law straight away, and he's an intelligent guy. He could debate from a very knowledgeable globe point of view, if you will, and I wasn't that far into it. I'd done as much as I thought I needed to put my point across and argue the toss, albeit with some incorrect information, and that's exactly what we did for a good evening. And from there I wanted to get this out there. On a phone call today with my sister, she said, are you still doing this stuff, this flat Earth stuff? And I had to explain, yeah, I'm doing a live broadcast today, I take this seriously, I'm not kidding. Anyway, so yeah, let's just get back on. So the first thing I did was actually interview my uncle, along with doing a couple of video logs to sort of introduce that. I wanted to get a religious sort of standpoint on this flat earth thing. And I understood at the time that my uncle, who is a pastor, he had 2 churches, he does a lot of charity work now because he's retired, but he's a very active Christian, or what was it, how was he phrased it, a follower of Jesus, and you know, his understanding of the Bible was exemplary. So I really wanted to discuss flat earth with him, because my understanding has always been that the Bible was a flat earth book. So, you know, I discussed that with him, and it was a fascinating interview. It's on YouTube, but mainly because he was fighting the heliocentric model, or the globe Earth model as we know it, from a scientific point of view, which was fascinating. And it seems that most people who get flat earth information for the first time want to hang on to the stuff that they like. For me, it was Star Wars and space, and you know, as soon as I heard flat earth, I realised quickly that I was kissing goodbye to space, and I was a little bit heartbroken about that, to be fair. Most of my videos are sci-fi movies, so you know, as an enthusiast, you don't want to let go of these things, although I quickly got over it and moved on. But yeah, so here we are with this flat earth thing, with people saying, are you nuts doing this stuff, are you crazy? Well, maybe. But there are plenty of other people out there who are doing this, have similar ideas about flat earth and about the lies that are told about our world. So, have I gone through Matt's story? I think I have. Just check if I'm not missing out any bits. No, I haven't. Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you Matt's story. I mean, I've got just ... Matt's story in my notes, but Matt Powerland was an employee for NASA, and to my understanding, I'm not a historian on Matt Powerland, but you know, I've watched his videos and subscribed to his YouTube channel, and he had been working for NASA doing photorealistic artwork. So he's an artist. On a lot of his videos, I'll bring one up now actually, he's got some of the artwork that he does, and while he was working for NASA, he was a specialist at, you know, textures and things like this. So they'd give him maybe a landscape or something along those lines and say, we want it to look a bit more like that. So that was essentially Matt's job at NASA. And he went to a party, and again, this might be incorrect, but there was a power cut at the party, and there were, I hope I don't sex this up too much, but they were, you know, by candlelight, discussing a plane that had gone missing out in the Indian Ocean, or no, I don't want to get my facts wrong. It's somewhere in the southern hemisphere. And one of the guys quipped that they wouldn't find this plane that had gone missing. So what Matthew discussed was why won't they find this plane? And the guy essentially explained to him that the GPS system, let's bear in mind that that's global positioning system, wouldn't work that far down in the southern hemisphere. And of course Matt quizzed and quizzed and quizzed, as you know, anybody would, and they laid it out for him. They told him, they said the world is flat, and they explained why the GPS system would work from, again, what he explained on an interview with, I think it's a girlfriend of his, or the person interviewing was asking questions on one of his videos when he explains this story. Essentially explained that NASA, these high-ranking officials, were testing him to see his reaction, and I think his girlfriend was with him at the time, so he had somebody to testify that don't hold me to this, be the person that was interviewing him. But he had it all laid out for him, and then the following day, after they'd explained all this to him, not Matt, but the NASA officials went back to it being, you know, just referring to it as a normal globe. Let's just bring up Matt's video. I hope we get some audio.
TV is like the truth box. TV doesn't fucking tell you Santa Claus doesn't exist. It will never tell you at any point on any channel, even the news, breaking news, Santa Claus doesn't exist, folks. It'll always tell you Santa Claus does exist. So TV just tells you the truth? TV will never ever tell you Santa Claus doesn't exist. What if the kids find out? So what are you? An adult or a kid?
So that's Matt's good advert to his credit. So that's Matt's channel, that's the NASA channel, and he was my first introduction. Sometimes when I watch some of his channels, I hope he's not going to take offence to this, but you know, he's just a guy, and a lot of the people that I'm going to discuss in the next section are just people. I'm just a guy, I'm no academic, I'm just a regular guy. I deliver shopping for a living. You know, there's nothing special about me or any of the people out there. Don't get me wrong, a lot of them are far more intelligent than I am, but they're still just regular people. We've got people like Mark Sargent. In fact, I'll go through a list. So some of the other YouTubers, these are reference. I'll put all of these in a link below the description of this video once it goes onto YouTube. But I'm just going to reel them off. There's a whole bunch of these quote unquote other YouTubers that are flat earthers. I wasn't going to include RSE in the list because he wouldn't classify himself as a YouTuber. But in the scheme of the great deception that this is, RSE is a wonderful channel to watch. I've said it before, he is a Christian channel. He will tell you, in fact, you need to give your heart to Jesus. That's the way to be saved. He will tell you over and over again. But ignoring that if you're not a Christian, or taking that on board if you are, his channel is a perceptive channel. It's one that exposes the occult. It's well worth watching. He's a great guy because he's so perceptive, but he's not really a flat earther, so he's top of the list, but he's not actually on the list, if you know what I mean. But Tiger Dan, another Christian channel, but wonderful, great flat earther. Matt Palan we've discussed. Mark Sargent, I seem to quote Mark Sargent all the time. Just yesterday when we were practicing to do this feed, my wife and I, I felt like every word, every good quote was from Mark Sargent. Yesterday it was regarding satellites. You know, my wife was asking, wouldn't the sun melt satellites? And after saying I don't think they exist, I pointed out one of Mark Sargent's remarks, which was, why don't they just turn? Why doesn't one turn and take a picture of another one? But nevertheless, Mark Sargent is excellent. I'll go into a little bit more detail about Mark Sargent in a moment. But then you've got people like Eric DeBay. He's been doing this for a very, very long time, extremely knowledgeable. He's got a book out about the flat earth, where he references and references and references. Great book. Rob Skiba, Jeranism, Wakey Wakey, Mr. Thrive and Survive, Yoda's Flat Earth. Patricia Steele is an interesting one. She interviews. She's a good sort of starting point. Well, I would say Mark Sargent. If you start at number 2 of his Flat Earth clues, just trust me, and go through them one at a time, you know, dedicated maybe, I think they're about 20 minutes long each, but just dedicate a night each to them. They're well worth watching, extremely well narrated by Mark Sargent, good material, good footage, easy to digest. But Patricia Steele does interviews with a lot of the flat earth researchers, so it's a good way of getting a sort of a condensed version of what each of these individuals do on her interviews. And so far I've got, my guest hasn't come yet, but hopefully I'll do an equally good job in the future with people I interview. But yeah, she's probably my second port of call for any new people that haven't heard or seen anything about the flat earth, and it's taken very, I don't want to say taken lightly, but it's done in a very laid back way on her show. And then you've got people like Scrawny to Brawny. Again, I'll show a little bit of their material in a moment. Fake Spaceman in Space. Along with people who comment, so you've got people like Wake the Sheeple, who goes through a lot of effort to actually comment on YouTube channels. I believe he compiles a lot of these flat earth videos as well, so that they're all in one place on his channel. And I know a lot of flat earthers, I'll say this now, if anybody wanted to re-upload my videos, go ahead. I haven't monetised them as yet, although I'm so poor I might end up doing this. But yeah, I doubt the 100 or so viewings at the moment that I'm getting will break the bank in any quick time. But in the meantime, if anyone wants to share my videos and upload them to their own channels just to get the information out there, feel free. But yeah, people like Wake the Sheep will make loads and loads of comments. And then you've got people like Insanity and Insanity is Sanity, who's started off doing something unrelated, although again, for him, it is related in terms of hallucinogens and, if you want to call them that, out-of-body experiences. But he's moved on to flat Earth. He's brought out things like the truth bomb. Same with Fake Spaceman in Space. He's done. I might show you a little bit of that in a moment. Truth bombing, if you want to call it that, and it's a good hashtag, truth bomb. But yeah, and then people like myself, and I'll put links to all of these people down there. But I'll start with Scrawny to Brawny. Why not? For people who are thinking this isn't particularly slick, you're right. This is my first time doing this, so if it all seems a bit slow and sluggish while I'm presenting things to you, you have to accept my apologies. Okay, so Scrawny to Brawny. This particular clip is like a compilation of lots of... Yeah, let's just play it. I won't talk over it. I'll just play a little section of this.
The heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light.
The first time I saw sonoluminescence was in a darkened room. I was transfixed to look at this spherical flask of fluid.
And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters.
A tiny spot of bright light contained in a flask of liquid.
And you look into the center, and in the center see a glowing blue-purple light, which could be seen with the unaided eye.
This star in a jar is made when a sound wave is passed through a small bubble inside a flask of liquid. And this sound wave, and this sound wave.
And God said.
So I'll pause it there. So that was a little piece from Scrawny to Brawny. Again, wonderful YouTuber. I don't want to go through the connections he's making to the firmament and waters above and the waters below, but for somebody who's been in this for some time, most people who have looked into the flat earth will at some stage come across the religious materials, the biblical texts, and they will, the comparisons are glaring. I say I think it's my first video log, or maybe my second video log, that I was brought up a Christian, and the two theories, the scientific theory and the biblical theory, do not match in any way, shape or form. So it's one of those. Anyway, I want to have a look at some of these perfectly normal people, like Mark Sargent, just to give you an introduction on this, the first show, so that hopefully from here you'll, if you're watching as a person still believing in the globe, some places to go reference. But yeah, he actually, let's just share with you Mark Sargent's video now, and so you can see. I think I've picked, I'm not sure which flat earth clue I've picked. I just picked one at random just before the show started. Let's go to here. Yeah, like I say, sorry I'm not slick. If you're watching this, Patricia Steer, I'll get your name right eventually. You do make it look so easy. It really isn't. Okay, what was I doing? Mark Sargent. Here we go, let's just play it. Hopefully it's in a good spot.
Same with the moon, other solar systems, and so on. Releasing the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey in 1968, right before the actual moon missions, was no accident. It took the greatest director of all time 5 years to make, and several people who saw the theater screenings claimed that many military groups were listed in the credits, only to be removed years later. But 2001 is just a side note of this clue. For those who really want to dig into Stanley Kubrick's hidden vision, I highly recommend the documentary Room 237. A link to it is below as well. Now you are aware of the first two groups of space films. There are those that contain generous amounts of fantasy.
Okay, so
those who try to
that's Mark Sargent. It is Flat Earth Clues number 1. Now, I think I said earlier, you probably best start Sargent's clues. They're all really pertinent. But number 1 is, how can I phrase this kindly? It's one that's best watched later on, because it's on the side of conspiracy. In other words, there's a few assumptions in there that you will agree with him. There's no two ways about it. But if you watch that as the first clue, you may find yourself being even more sceptical. It's hard to describe what I'm trying to get across. But yeah, let's just see where I'm at. Covered all of that. Yeah. So I'm going to move on to Q&A, see if we've had any questions. Okay, click the select button to answer a question. Did you think that one of the problems is explaining flat Earth to people that can be so locked into the cyberspace that they think any visual media must be true? Then they don't see what they want to put down to their tech and actually look at the world. Oh, sorry, I've got a light shining in my eyes, so it's hard to see the comments. Robin Poe, thank you very much. Excellent question. Yes, that's. I think what you're trying to say is, do people have cognitive dissonance? Again, in one of the video logs, a friend of mine, when I was telling that I don't think satellites exist, just went to Google, looked up satellites and found a cartoon. Now, it's a cartoon in the respect that it's not a photograph, but it looked like a photograph. And when he sent it to me, he didn't spot that it wasn't a real photograph. To him it was. Now, for anybody who's watching this that's been into the flat Earth for a long time, you'll agree that once you've got this information and you kind of know what you're looking at, for me it was instantaneous, the switch. From looking at NASA videos or NASA current presentations on Science at NASA, that's the NASA channel for NASA. But yeah, on Science at NASA, I always felt just disappointed that it wasn't what I was hoping for. But when you've got that idea in your mind that none of it's actually real, or for me the switch was just straight away, you can start seeing it. Maybe this was because I'd looked so heavily, or for a good year, at subliminal messages and subliminal embeds, and now it's all I can see. Every time I see the blue marble, I see the clouds and what they're putting in there on a subliminal level. I can't unsee it, unfortunately, and it was the same when I went back with a critical look at the moon landings. So obvious that this stuff is fake, when not even if you haven't got any vague idea of how they make the special effects, even if you've just got no clue and you just look at them objectively, you can tell that it's not real, especially things like the takeoff. And with a very limited knowledge of the moon landings, I put my neck out there and said, I think this is nonsense. The way this shot looks to me is that it's done with a cameraman, it's a panning shot. I've subsequently found that they had other shots that to me just look like junk. How can I phrase this to people who aren't necessarily in the know? Special effect shots are known as tests, and the shots that they used for less important takeoffs. So the takeoff that was the best takeoff was the one where they captured the blue marble shot. But for previous shots, they just looked like previous tests they didn't like, or static camera shots, and they didn't like the end result. But they used those older, not quite so good tests, and then gave the world lies that the camera failed. Who knows? We've got no proof of this, but to the critical eye, the stuff from the 50s looks rubbish. Digressing from your point slightly here, do most people think the media must be true? Yes. In the comments you get the same sort of thing. You'll have people say, I've seen the moon landings, and Matt Powerland, to his credit, does a perception test with people and shows them images that are photographs, and the photographs are blatantly not real things, and people don't know what to look for, so they just your cognitive dissonance kicks in and you just say, well, it must be real. And the same applies to the moon landings. You have no basis of reference. So if you see it, seeing is believing. Seeing it on TV is believing that it happened. And other YouTubers in the past, I'm sure it was on one of the Flat Earth roundtables, when a globe head, I've got to stop saying that because it's so derogatory, but when a heliocentric conspiracy believer had said something along the lines of, I saw the moon landings, I watched this happen, one of the flat earthers replied, well, I saw Godzilla on TV, doesn't make it real. Seeing with your own eyes is believing, and being critical and looking up and actually using what God gave you is a skill that's been locked up in people by the system or by our governments or whatever it is that you want to say. People like watching it secondhand on TV. People don't look out their window. People don't go out. If they're in a bar, they'll be watching a TV. So it's endless. I mean, another reason maybe why I've come to this point, I'm going over my time now, is because I've stopped watching TV such a long time ago. For a short period after college, when I was very poor, I got rid of it completely. I had to shove a screwdriver in the back of my VCR so that the TV man wouldn't, give me a fat fine for not having a TV license. But I got rid of all my TVs. I had a projector and a video, and just watched movies and just bought movies with the TV license money. And that, in my opinion, is the reason why, even now I don't watch very much TV. It was much easier to unplug from this because I'm not being bombarded with the media, with the news. I get my news secondhand from people and sort of listen to it more sceptically when it's told secondhand. So yeah, that's. See if there's any more questions. I promised I would go to the YouTube feed from the broadcast yesterday. My wife and I were desperately trying to figure out how to answer questions, and from what I can see, there's no questions. Either I've done something wrong or there are no YouTube questions. But in either case, I've run over the half an hour, so I might sign off at this point. So yeah, I've looked at your comments. So yeah, thank you very much for your questions. There are a couple more that have popped in from Robin Poe, but unfortunately I think I'm going to run over the half an hour if I carry on talking. So it's been brilliant. Thank you very much for tuning into Flat Earth UK. I don't think there's any other videos that I wanted to cover in this particular video, so I will sign off and I will see you in the next one.